In the history of mankind, plagues and epidemics have swept the globe on many occasions, bringing countless deaths and panic. From the Black Death in the Middle Ages to the modern COVID-19. These deadly diseases have not only changed the fate of countless people, it has also profoundly affected society and the course of history. Let's take a look back at 10 of the deadliest epidemics in human history, understanding their origins, spread and great impact on the world. 10th place, typhus. The disease that killed 3 million Russians between 1918 and 1922. The patients are scared to death. It's caused by the bacteria Rickettsia. Spread by lice and fleas. Post-infectious, the patient will have a high fever for 1 to 2 weeks, experiencing flu symptoms, subsequent emergency spread throughout the body. Even the outbreaks of meningitis, typhus, and typhoid fever are associated with war, poverty, and crowded living conditions, closely related. Luckily, advances in modern medicine and the popularization of vaccines have made this kind of disease is no longer an insurmountable threat. Nevertheless, this history reminds us, the importance of public health cannot be ignored. 9th place, smallpox. The Spanish Armada arrived in Mexico in 1520 with the smallpox virus, leading to a devastating outbreak. Francisco de Equia unintentionally becomes a superpropagator, rapid spread of the virus. In 9 short months, Mexico's population plummets from 22 million to 14 million. Smallpox not only destroys the body, it's also a huge psychological scare. Despite all the attempts at treatment, but to no avail. It wasn't until the popularization of vaccines in the 20th century that eradication of smallpox. Number 8, Anthony's Plague. Between 165 and 180 a devastating plague struck the Roman Empire. The Antonine Plague claimed 10 million lives. 25 to 33% of the total population at that time. Roman soldiers brought back this deadly virus from the Battle of Gendong in triumph. The plague is spreading rapidly. About 2,000 deaths per day, the city of Rome is shrouded in the midst of terror. The plague nearly destroyed the Roman army, forcing them to recruit from slaves and robbers. The plague marked the end of the golden age of the Roman Empire. The empire was shaken by depopulation and social dislocation. Although Rome eventually repelled the invaders, but the former glory is gone. 7th place, influenza pandemic. A terrible plague has broken out in Mexico. Influenza pandemic. In just 3 years, the plague claimed the lives of some 15 million people. Wiped out nearly 80% of Mexico's population. In 1545, with the arrival of the Spanish colonists. This deadly disease is creeping up on us. Patient has high fever, bleeding from ears and nose. They'll be dead in a few days. Although scientists have so far failed to determine the cause of the disease, but the 2018 study found, Salmonella enterica may be the culprit. This plague nearly destroyed Aztec civilization, changing the trajectory of Mexico's history. It also reflects the brutal side of colonial history. 6th Third Plague, 1855. A global plague, the Third Plague pandemic. From a small village in Yunnan, China, it's starting to spread fast. In just 5 years, 15 million people have died as a result. Bubonic plague is spread by fleas, causes germination of air bubbles in the patient's armpits or legs. He died spitting up blood. With civil war and unrest, bubonic plague spreads across the country, eventually spread globally through maritime trade. Although little was known about the plague at the time. But the West is gradually recognizing the importance of segregation. The British adopted in Hong Kong traffic control and segregation measures, but the effect is limited. Instead, it triggers panic. In India, the gradual rise of the independence movement in the context of the plague. Early 20th century, with medical advances and public health measures, the bubonic plague is only gradually being brought under control. This plague has not only advanced the global public health system, it's also changed the landscape of the world. 5th, COVID-19. End of 2019. COVID-19 quietly explodes, rapidly sweeping the globe, changed our lives. As of 2023, COVID-19 has killed an estimated 7 to 35 million people. Initial symptoms such as fever, sore throat, cough and fatigue, rapidly spreading and evolving multiple variants. March 11, 2020, WHO declares new crown outbreak a pandemic. This is not just a public health crisis, it also triggered economic and social shocks, global stock market turmoil, Tourism and retail sector suffers. Supply chain disruption. Education system shifts to online model. Rising social inequality. Despite the end of the COVID-19 emergency by WHO on May 5, 2023, but the virus is still spreading. Many still suffer from the after effects. Nevertheless, epidemics also inspire innovation and solidarity. The rapid development of vaccines and the spread of telecommuting demonstrate the potential and promise of humanity. Fourth place, Black Death. The Black Death, a medieval byword for horror between 1346 and 1353, sweeping across Europe, Asia, and North Africa, claimed the lives of some 25 to 50 million people. 30 to 60% of the European population at that time. This plague originated in Asia. Introduced to Europe via the Silk Road, mainly caused by the second Moraxella catarrhalis, flea-borne. Patients may experience high fever, headache, and enlarged trigger nodes, if left untreated, extremely high mortality rate. The Black Death was more than a biological disaster. It's more of a cultural and social turning point, weakened European labor force, accelerated the disintegration of the feudal system. It facilitated the establishment of the segregation regime, becoming the prototype of a modern quarantine system. Third place, HIV. Since the first incident in 1981, HIV has become a persistent adversary of global public health, claimed the lives of more than 43 million people, and sustained transmission of AIDS. Non-human primate HIV virus originating in Central Africa silently invades the immune system. Gradually depletes the body's immunity. Sub-Saharan Africa most affected. South Africa has 13.9% of its population living with HIV. Although there is no cure for AIDS, however, antiretroviral therapy has been effective in controlling the disease. Global efforts to combat AIDS drive public health reforms. However, stigmatization and discrimination continue to prevent patients from accessing necessary health services. Second place, Plague of Justinian, 541 AD. A plague that began in Egypt swept through the Byzantine Empire, even to Europe and West Asia. The disaster, known as the Plague of Justinian, claimed between 15 and 100 million lives. Living. The Byzantine Empire was at its peak under Justinian's rule. But the plague is spreading fast. Up to 16,000 deaths a day in Constantinople. The city is paralyzed. The plague not only weakened the empire's army and economy, it also led to mass starvation. Changed the course of history. With the fall of the Eastern Roman Empire, neighboring peoples and countries have risen to reshape the political landscape of the Mediterranean region, accelerated the coming of the Middle Ages. First place, 1918 flu pandemic. In 1918 flu pandemic swept the world during World War I. Caused between 17 and 100 million deaths. 1% to 5% of the world's population at that time. Although it was known at the time as being of Spanish origin, but its place of origin remains to this day. During the First World War, Spanish media first to report flu, the influenza, which attracted global attention, broke out in 3 waves between 1918 and 1919. The second wave is the most deadly. The United States and Europe have been the hardest hit. Inexplicably, the flu suddenly disappeared after 2 years. Scientists speculate that the virus may mutate. Diminished toxicity, people are becoming immune, eventually leading to the disappearance of the virus.